All right, this lesson is for 5th grade, lesson 3. Today we learned about powers of 10, which included new things called exponents. Now, just as a reminder, exponents are that little number that's up in the corner. So this right here is our exponent, right there, okay? This 10 is called our base number. Both of these numbers can change all the time, but for this lesson, it's always going to be a 10, okay? The exponents are going to change. We'll get to different base numbers in a different lesson. But here is a chart that explains what these powers of 10 actually mean. So before, when we were taking numbers and multiplying it by 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and we were adding zeros, moving decimals in our chart, we were moving directions, there's another way of writing them. Now, 10, as you know, is 10 times 1. We call that 10 to the first power. And then here, 100 is 10 times 10, or we call that 10 to the second power. 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10, which is 10 to the third power. 10,000 is 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, which is 10 to the fourth power. And 100,000 is 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, or 10 to the fifth power. It's also good to note that the exponent, I think I missed a T or an N, sorry. This exponent equals the number of zeros in the number. So if you are ever confused, just count up the zeros and that's going to be your exponent when we're dealing with base 10, okay? So as long as you have these notes, I'm going to help you with a couple questions on your homework, and hopefully that helps. So let's look at number 1A. It says write the following in exponential form. That means using exponents. So remember how I said that the number of zeros equals our exponents? So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in 10,000 there are 4 zeros. So it is going to be 10 to the fourth power. Okay? Now with questions like C, D, and F, they have a multiplication problem. And I'm gonna give you the biggest hint in the world. When you're multiplying 100 by 100, just keep the 1 and add up those zeros. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I do the comma rule, and I found out that this is 10,000. Well, I just figured out 10,000 over here. Or if you didn't check that, you see that there are 4 zeros, and I can go 10 to the fourth power. Okay? For questions like number 2, they're very similar to what we were doing before. They're just now with exponents. Okay? So for let's try number 9, okay? I'm going to write it with my decimal point. Now remember, when the decimal point is not shown, it's always at the end of the number. And if I'm multiplying, I know that I'm going to move my decimal place to the right. Or if you're using your chart, you're going to move them to the left. So here is the decimal point. I'm going to take it and move it 3 spaces over to the right, because that's the way I like to do it. If you like to do the chart, you know what to do. So you go 1, 2, 3 with my bunny hops. My decimal point is now right there. And I have empty spaces, so I put my zeros there. And my new number here is 9,000. I'll put my comma. Okay? If you're dividing, remember you move in the opposite direction. You do the same thing with those exponents. You look at that number and you're like, okay, that's a 2, which means I need to move over 2 spaces. Now this is a whole number again. So I know that my decimal is at the end of my number. And because I'm dividing, I'm going to go to the left. Or if you're doing your chart, you know you move your numbers to the right. So I go 1, 2, and my new decimal place is right there. So the answer to this number is 72. And if you would like to put the 0.00, you may. And that is how you do these kind of questions. Very similar to what we were doing before, okay? Now over here, these are the patterns that we're talking about. When you're multiplying or dividing, your decimal place moves, or your numbers move over to the other direction. So here I start with 3/100ths because it's in the hundredths place. Then I go to the tenths. Then I have a blank number, but then I go to 30. Then I go to another blank number and another blank number. So you have to ask yourself, am I going smaller or am I going bigger? And since I start with a decimal and over here is 30, I definitely know that $30 is way more than 3 cents, right? So I'm starting small and I'm going big, which means I am multiplying by 10 each time. So I have 0.03, 0.3, and if I know that I'm moving my decimal over once because I'm multiplying by 10, if I move my decimal over here, that number now becomes 3. Then 30, then I'm going to move my decimal over once. I have an empty space, so I need to take a 0. I have 300. Move my decimal over, have a blank space, so it is now 3,000. And so I don't confuse myself, I'm going to go back and erase the zeros that I made to find the next number, because I just don't want to confuse myself. And that is how I do those problems. Always look for the pattern. Notice if you're getting bigger or if you're going smaller. If you're going smaller, you know you're dividing by 10. If you're going bigger, you know you're multiplying by 10. I hope this helps you complete your homework. Thank you.